Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate. We're looking ahead to the final 2 years of Barack Obama's presidency, now that the midterms have gone the way of the opposition Republicans, with them taking both the House of Representatives and now the Senate. With us from Washington, Bruce Stokes of the Pew Research Center here in the studio. Ellen Wasselina, political consultant, member of Republicans Abroad. Author Jake Lamar, member of Democrats Abroad. Before the break, Jake was talking about the man who will be the second most powerful man in Washington soon, the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell. He spelled out after the results came in his native Kentucky how he sees the future.
That's what this campaign was really all about. It wasn't about me or my opponent. It was about a government that people no longer trust to carry out its most basic duties, to keep them safe, to protect the border, to provide dignified and quality care for our veterans. A government that can't be trusted to do the basic things because it's too busy focusing on things it shouldn't be focused on at all.
All right, keeping America safe. Bruce Stokes, is America unsafe?
Well, certainly a lot of Americans think so. We did a survey about a month ago where a surprisingly large minority of the population believed that ISIS was going to come to America. Certainly, the killings more recently in Canada probably fed some of those fears. We have the sense of Ebola coming to our borders. As one of your guests mentioned, there were actually television ads run by the Republicans, one very memorable one that I saw against a Democratic representative in Arizona, which more or less argued that Ebola-infested ISIS terrorists were crossing the Mexican border illegally because their congresswoman hadn't built the wall high enough. So there was an attempt to touch all those buttons of fear. Probably it did motivate some voters. And I think that going forward, the public is uncertain about an uncertain world. Certainly in the last couple of months, there's been a great degree of global uncertainty in Ukraine, Syria, Iraq, Ebola. And as Mitch McConnell mentioned, the surveys are very clear. The public has lost faith in the government. They aren't that much more faithful in the corporations, but anyway, they've lost faith in the government. We did a survey in Europe before the European parliamentary elections, and about a third of the public had faith in the European Parliament, and the Europeans were aghast. The most recent survey before the election in the United States found that 9% of the public had faith in the Congress. So there is not a sense that there's anybody in control.
And as you were saying,
and I think,
as you were saying, Bruce, foreign policy high on voters' minds, as seen in Georgia's Senate race, where Republican David Perdue beat out Democrat Michelle Nunn.
Georgians want a safer America. They want a stronger America. They want a more secure America. Whether it's a stronger foreign policy, dealing with threats like ISIS and Ebola, fixing the VA, securing our border.
We've reminded people of what a two-party system looks like and a civic dialogue. We've lifted up and advocated issues that matter to people in this country, whether it's raising minimum wage, whether it's pay equity for women, whether it's bipartisan immigration reform.
All right, so there you hear it. That's the rhetoric on election night. Let me put it to you now, Bruce Stokes. Can Barack Obama change his stripes and do deals with Capitol Hill? I don't know, for instance, taking more of those congressmen out to play golf with him.
Well, he hasn't demonstrated a great interest in doing that or an ability to do that over the last 6 years, I must say. And anything can happen. Certainly has 2 years, and he would like to leave on a positive note. He will supposedly have a Friday meeting with the leaders of the House and Senate to begin talking about this. But this is all kabuki. This is all theater. What will put proof to whether there's a new era in Washington and a new era coming out of the White House is if deals can be made early next year, and that will require both compromise on both sides of Pennsylvania Avenue. It also will require the president to show a willingness to fight in ways that at least members of Congress tell me they think that the president doesn't like a political fight. And there's going to be a lot of fights over potential vetoes of Republican legislation.
Let's talk about some of those fights. Comment first here on Facebook from Philip. It's the beginning of an end to the Obama administration, and it's bad news for the world. Yes, a lot of these are foreign policy issues. Let's talk about one of them, Iran. Ellen Wassilina, if there is no deal by the end of November, those nuclear talks with Iran that are unprecedented could be extended. What will be the way forward for Barack Obama? Will he sign a treaty that is ratified by the Senate, or will he try to railroad something through?
Difficult position for him to be in, obviously, in Iran, and trying to find, and I know John Kerry has done some fabulous work in terms of diplomatic shuffling, but Iran is an issue that needs to be dealt with. We need to open up also to Iran. I think that giving and making these talks successful are important for the stability in the Middle East. We talk about Iraq, we talk about Syria. I've heard that there are talks going on also to open up the country to trade. The French have done so already. There's this shuffle diplomacy going on again. Iran definitely we need to find a stable position for Iran in the Middle East, because it's going to come and maybe be an ally of some other countries in the region. I don't even talk about the energy aspect of that region and the relationship between Iraq and Iran.
But will he and the Republicans find common ground where they can agree on how to handle Iran, and will they agree on a deal together? So,
well, what we know,
Bruce Stokes,
what we know from the polling data is that 3/4 of Republicans in the American population, self-identified Republicans in the American population, believe that Iran is a major threat to the country. They don't trust the Iranians to bargain in good faith. And 2 years ago, when we did a survey, 80% of Republicans were willing to use military force if this negotiation didn't succeed. So at least from the Republican base, you have a real hard-line signal being sent to Congress.
Jake Lamar.
I just have to return to the point of origin here. The day Barack Obama was sworn in January 20th, 2009, and the tactics and strategy that the Republicans have employed ever since. I don't see any reason to think that now they're going to be open to compromise. Their goal is to thwart this president, to ruin his presidency. Ellen asked the question, a great question. Why can't Bill Clinton and why can't Barack Obama get along with the Republicans the way Bill Clinton did?
And by the way, let me interrupt you, because on Twitter, Matt is asking the same one. Republicans should end up with 54 seats, he says. Can Obama compromise and work with others as Clinton did?
Well, the thing is, we asked the question for generations. What would happen if there were a black president of the United States? And now we know. One of the three branches of the government decided on a strategy of non-cooperation. Now that entire branch will probably be paralyzed.
But it takes
one of the other three
branches.
Because he's black?
Because he's black. The Judiciary Committee, the Supreme Court, the Judiciary branch, gutted the Voting Rights Act, probably the most important triumph of the Civil Rights Movement. This will now make discrimination against black voters easier and prevent the possibility of another Barack Obama. The Citizens United decision, which we've now seen a flood of corporate money into campaigns. This was also done to counteract Obama's success in getting small donations in 2008. This is the big thing nobody wants to talk about, even Barack Obama himself, because there has always been denial. There's always been denial of the centrality of race in American political life.
That's a very good point that you make, too, because Barack Obama has not been on the side of the African American population has not done as much, I think. And this is where you see a lot of disappointment on the fact of the youth for the Black American population that were disaffected by.
African Americans came out in support of Barack Obama more in 2012 than they did in 2008.
But what about in 2014? What happened?
The wage stagnation, et cetera, is a problem for Black people as well as all other people who are disadvantaged.
But I thought the economy got better.
In terms of midterm elections, no, people don't turn out in force in midterm elections ever. So I don't think that's a shock.
Bruce Stokes, let me ask you on this point, because there was in 2012 people, as we said at the outset, painting the Republican Party, when you looked at the demographics after the vote, as a party of angry old white men. And what we've seen is in South Carolina, the first African-American senator elected since the 19th century, we've seen a lot of Hispanic voters going against the incumbent for the Republican in Colorado, for instance. Is there a change on that score?
Well, I think it's too early to tell, but certainly because we don't know what the turnout was for this election yet, and so it's hard to know. We have a rough sense of Hispanics are down a little bit in terms of their support of the Democrats. Asian Americans are down even more in terms of support of the Democrats. They both still support Democrats, but less so than they had in the past. But we don't know how significant that was because we don't know the overall turnout. But certainly the Republicans, based on this election, can argue that we're beginning to make inroads in those minority groups that they obviously have to make inroads into if they're going to win their next presidential election.
Ellen was asking as well for women.
Women, the Democrats, from the early exit polling data that I've seen, the Democratic appeal to women is down. They still won a majority of the female vote, but it was less than it had been. And I found significant that in a number of races that I was paying attention to, Colorado Senate race, a House race here in the suburbs of Washington, the Republican candidates in both those races won by diffusing the birth control issue, by making the argument that birth control should be available over the counter. Now that dodges all sorts of issues of who would pay for it, and you can't do an IUD over the counter and all sorts of things like that. But it seemed to help those candidates with young female voters who were being scared by the Democrats that the Republicans were trying to deny them birth control.
But I would say, if I may, I would say that we see more women candidates on the Republican side, which is a big shift, because the Democrats are rightly known to promote a lot more women candidates. And I think what I think helped, and you saw a lot of women candidates come out from the Republican side, this is definitely a plus and has a bigger appeal, too, to the electorate. And you'll see a change also towards probably more different other groups, maybe younger people and other issues that'll come out. And I think this is where the Republicans can start to change. And you're absolutely right to say, Mr. Stokes, to say that the appeal and the type of platform, and certainly in these down economic times, we've seen too that governors, many Republican governors won because we know they can run the economy better. We're looking for economic solutions. And obviously at the end of this Barack Obama presidency, they're looking for anything they can get to go up and not go any further down. Wouldn't you say, Jake?
It depends on who you mean by they. You mean governors or yeah, governors. Yeah, I mean they have control of their states. They're going to look for what's best for them. But in the Senate and in the House, I don't think we're going to see much of anything happening except the Senate trying to get Barack Obama to repeal Obamacare or parts of Obamacare. They can attach certain aspects of the bill to the spending bills and try and blackmail him into giving up parts of his own signature legislation.
Jake, we're seeing one prediction. Judy on Facebook saying the do-nothing Congress in the U.S. will continue to do nothing. Should Barack Obama try to do more executive orders when it comes to things like immigration reform?
Absolutely, and I think that
you think he should.
I absolutely think he should, and I think that this is where we've come. This is the point now. It's got to be fight fire with fire. Obama has signed fewer executive orders than either George W. Bush or Bill Clinton. Yet the Republicans have threatened him with impeachment for signing executive orders. And I think that is the natural endpoint of this trajectory that started in 2009. I don't think Republicans actually believe that Obama can be removed from office. But if he is impeached, as Bill Clinton was, if there is a trial in the Senate, as there was 15 years ago, Obama's administration will be paralyzed for a year at least. And if they've been talking about making it impossible for him to govern, that's the way to do it.
But immigration is a bipartisan issue, and they should be able to agree. Democrats and Republicans are both concerned.
It's been 6 years, Ellen. They haven't agreed.
Why hasn't Barack Obama then done something? He's the leader. Is he not the president?
I think he's ready to now. I think
he
has reached out again and
again. To hear that.
He's been the one who has reached out to Republicans again and again from 2009 till now.
It's only the Republicans' fault then if we hear
the
this.
Rejection, yes. I mean, you just have to look at the record.
Just...
Barack Obama doesn't storm out.
Ellen, I remind you that this Democratic president has deported twice as many illegal immigrants as his predecessor did, and it hasn't bought him any compromise from the Republicans on immigration reform. So now one could say that the president was foolish to try to make that bargain when there was no one on the other side to bargain with, but there's no evidence that up to this point, now I think the Republicans may go for immigration reform now because they need it before the 2016 presidential election.
Yeah, we're looking
they
at
didn't need immigration reform before this election.
But the thing is, politics famously is the art of compromise. Barack Obama understands this. The thing is, we have not seen politics as usual in Washington since the day he was sworn in. There has been...
Can I jump in here? Because
Yes.
if you ask the public, do they want people to compromise? A majority of the public says yes. But then when you ask people about their own personal, political, and social values, we as a country are more divided than at any time since 1994 when we began to ask these questions. So the public is a bit schizophrenic here. They want compromise, but don't you dare compromise on the issues I care about. And that's also the message being sent to politicians.
All right. And by the way, today, Wednesday, November 5th, for many, marks day one of the 2016 presidential election campaign. Now, already, Iowa, the state that kicks off the primaries, has enjoyed the visit of potential hopefuls, including a familiar face.
Hello, Iowa! I'm back! It is true, I am thinking about it.
All right, she is thinking about it. That was back in September.
She's
been, I don't know how long she's been thinking about it, but what do you think the tone will be for the next 2 years?
The tone, wow, it's hard to say, but it's going to be very hot, and I think the Republicans now, have a boost.
Is it going to be more of the same what Bruce Stokes just described, this ever more polarized America?
Listen, the economy has to, fortunately, it's growing. America has its capacity to innovate. It has its immigrants to innovate, to invest. It has the capacity, resilience, what we call resilience. My parents were immigrants. I'm first-generation American. We have this capacity to grow and to innovate and make things work, whether it's gridlock in the Senate or the House or whatever. We have to make it work. We're fighters. We have to make it work. And we stand for values. We look at immigration. We look at education. We look at the wars. The policies now have to change. We've got to make a change. This is the way it goes. After 2 mandates of a Barack Obama, someone else will come in. Will it be a Democrat? Personally, you know my opinion, but there has to be other options. People are looking for other options. When you look at the low congressional approval rating, 80% disapprove. If you look at the way Barack Obama's job disapproval, 53% disapprove. If you look at the generic congressional report, et cetera, direction of the country, 66%. We're on the wrong track. Tell me, where do we go now? So I hope someone has some good solutions, whoever it will be. We have to find a right way for the country to stay number one. This is the idea.
Well, I think aside from the demonization of Barack Obama, which I do think is a very specific phenomenon, the big problem is inequality. Now, in terms of just raw politics, as a Democrat, I feel glad that we have this seasoned campaigner who looks like the inevitable candidate, but you never know. I mean, back in
Really?
2006, a lot of people thought Hillary Clinton would be the Democratic candidate as well. I don't see another Obama coming down the track, but you never know. But I think the Republican battle for the nomination could be a lot bloodier. And I think if you end up with Jeb Bush versus Hillary Clinton, then my God, you know, where are the new faces?
But the appeal from the South and from the Latinos and from the Catholics could turn things around. You know, there's a whole, if you look at the demographics and how, you know, the United States has changed, if you look at the economic situation, if you look at those who voted normally Democrat now vote Republican, these midterm elections, I think, have turned things a little bit around in favor of the Republicans. We hope that the economy will now go forward and we can have some solutions, because you know what America wants? America wants to be strong. America wants to be that #1 power and stay that way.
Well, I heard an analyst last night talk about the blue wall. That is to say, there are so many blue states that carry so many electoral votes that any Republican candidate is going to have his or her work cut out for them. Again, Democratic candidates have won the popular vote in 5 of the last 6 presidential elections. It's going to be hard for a Republican just to overcome the electoral mountain. Obama in 2012 won an electoral college blowout.
2 final words. One.
I would point out that I come from Maryland, and we just elected a Republican governor, although we're one of the most Democratic states in the union. So Democrats shouldn't start counting measuring the Oval Office drapes yet.
All right. Food for thought. One final comment from Ali on Facebook. It doesn't matter which party holds the majority or not. Is the government responsive to its citizens? The answer is no. So there you go. Somebody angry with both sides. I want to thank our panel at this point. Jake Lamar, Ellen Wassilina, Bruce Stokes in Washington. Stay with us because our Media Watch segment is next. He's here like a deus ex machina, James Creedon.
I try. Good evening, Francois. We're taking a look at how the midterm elections have been covered in the US media. Lots of gimmickry often with election coverage in the US media. You'll remember the CNN hologram back in 2008.
Oh, yes.
We're working on a France 24 hologram. We'll see how we can go. You also had in 2012 a virtual convention done by the CNN team, and MSNBC had Minority Report style touchscreen gizmos. So every election there's a new sort of gimmick which Mediate.com has described as virtual inanity. Well, I quite like what Mashable.com have done for this midterm election. The Lego Senate has all you need to know about the GOP's big win. So essentially what they did is they went in the other direction, Francois, and instead of modernity and all sorts of gimmicks, they just used Lego, essentially, to track throughout the night.
The France 24 chalkboard.
This is it, right, indeed. That's next in the, I suppose, regressive stakes. And so you can see the yellow bricks were the undetermined seats, right? And you can track it the whole way down. And if that's not clear enough, there's a helpful GIF where you can see the progress of results as they came in over the evening in Lego form, Francois.
Okay.
The Lego Senate. And what else do we have? Well, a lot of criticism too for the amount of spending in this election. Jon Stewart summed it up by saying the success story of this year's midterm election was big money. And a quote from him, I still remember the days when people spoke openly about banning money from the political process. Well, tonight, $6.5 billion later, those people aren't talking. Money is. Elsewhere, Democracy Now! .org, they're looking at the whole issue of dark money and essentially the fact that some $1 billion comes from anonymous so-called dark money groups, and it's very unclear at least until after the election where that money is coming from. So clearly there's an issue there in terms of transparency and all of that. For The Economist, they're looking at that issue as well, this time in terms of campaign advertising, $1 billion.
Great headline.
It is a pretty good headline. And actually, that's not just the Economist team that came up with that. That was an attack ad on John Boehner. I'll leave you figure out why that is the case. But in any case, a lot of criticism as well for overspending on advertising. I think it was 1 in every 3 ads on network or on, was it cable television, was for was an
a record
advertisement.
I hear for a non-presidential election year.
Exactly. And just one final article. If it happened there, Americans to elect the legislature. This is a series by Slate where they essentially describe events as if it happened in another country, essentially. So questions have been raised about why the equivalent of the GDP of Montenegro is being spent on a contest to determine the membership of a body expected to accomplish little over the next 2 years. Elsewhere in the article, they're saying there have been disturbing and unconfirmed reports of a war on women being waged by religious extremists in the country's western mountains. So an interesting take on Slate.com where they're looking at the election as if it happened overseas. A lot of patronage networks as well and powerful clans in US politics.
All right. And of course, the reactions still coming in. James Creedon, I want to thank you. I want to thank our panel as well. Thank you for joining us here for the France 24 debate.